Our next speaker would be Professor Sumathy.
Thank you for Madhubhashini inviting me. And I also heard from her that I was the first person to buy the book at Sarasavia. And, I was a bit bedraggled. I would have taken a photograph, but I had just got up and got into a tuk-tuk and gone to. So she said, "Where's the photograph?" And I said, "Well, sorry." But I would have treasured it. I was actually very surprised, and what Sasanka said now kind of explains it also a little bit, and also it's part of your larger work of Madhubhashini's. But it's a large collection of stories, and I was struck by I don't care about the Routledge and all that, but I was really struck by the kind of work that has gone into translating so many stories, because I translate and it takes me a long time. Not the first draft you do on the train or something like that, but then later, the work that goes into it, it's so laborious. And I was surprised and was very pleased. And in case I don't have the time to say it later, I want to say it here. Sasanga said that Tamil poetry has been translated a lot, but I also find Tamil poetry, when it gets translated, particularly by, and I don't want to say only diaspora translators, but there is a way of universalizing the poems, and glossing. There's a difficulty, a cultural, political difficulty that happens in the poem, and then that kind of glossed over. And I was very pleasantly, not surprised, but I was pleased to note that Madhubhashini wasn't doing that glossing. At times even, it was challenging. And I would go with then Niranjani Tejaswini here, that a translator should not be just pleasing, it should be challenging. I will begin. Give me a warning, right? All the time. I'll go with Walter Benjamin's task of the translation. I will bring it here just to kind of locate myself in the task of the translator, which is a very opaque, untranslatable work, actually. What he says is the language, the core of the language, the core of the community, the core of the people you're talking about is a tangle, is the thicket, the thick of the forest. And a translator, it kind of threw me off, when I first read it, because you're supposed to get into the middle of things. But he says, look at it from the outside. And outside from the rim, facing the wooded ridge, looking from the outside, facing the wooded ridge, then find itself in the thicket, the center of the forest of language. And then he says, the life of the originals attains its latest, continually renewed and most complete unfolding in the translation. So this is what I want to hold on to as I kind of think about how I will speak about these stories as translations, of course, because I don't have any other way of accessing. I have a lot to say, I can't say everything here. I look at myself reading this as somebody on the outside, and not outside, because I share with these stories a cultural, a political imaginary of living in this country. So it's not an alien space, but from the borders of this thicket. And how do I then approach it? And probably, in amongst all these people here, perhaps, as Benjamin would say, my reading probably is the most complete reading, as he is saying, because it's in the extended readings that the work gets its most complete form. What I would think of these works, and in the work of the translation, also Madhubhashini herself, but first the stories, is the self as Sinhala that you find in the stories is forever is in continual stretching. It's the self that's at the core of the story, this as Sinhala, is being extended and stretched and is in seeking. So for the most part, in all of the stories, and I haven't finished the book, but anyway, I'm still reading, but in most of the stories I've read, the self as Sinhala is stretching itself from its kind of a cultural or ideological hegemonic moorings, and is in seeking, is in the mode of seeking and embracing. The self is not in collapse though, it's still retaining a sense of its being Sinhala, and I suppose that will, and in some places it's more in collapse or more in flux, and in others it's still kind of tied to the core. All stories are not the same, but that seeking is very much a part of it. They're strongly Sinhala too, for they spell out their search for the other as a commitment that a member of the Sinhala community should do. For the seeking marks the narrative voices in the stories as Sinhala, almost always, very consciously. And when Madhubhashini tells these different stories as a translated effort, then she also tells the story of the Sinhala tale. It's a Sinhala tale about Sinhala tales. That's what I see as the entire collection. So, I mean, I don't have time to talk about all the stories, but I don't know why, and there's no particular reason why I would talk about one and not the other, but I'm just kind of trying to zip through because I've been reading until 5, 6, actually 7, 40 a.m. when I went to bed today, and I set the alarm and got up at 9:40, cancelled rehearsals, and went back to reading. So the labor of reading is a kind of enjoyable. But I had to come and speak today. Yeah, that's not. Anyway, Katya and Amra singers. Before that, I want to refer to something that Amrakirti said at the Jaffna literary event in 2014. I don't know whether Amra remembers this, that the Sinhala writer is willing to share love with the Tamil person, but not the state. He said that. Except in the case, and at that time he pointed out two, I suppose those are not the only stories, but he pointed out two exceptions, that is Eric Parachi and Jayatilaka Kamalaveda. He illustrated those stories and said they were doing something different. But, so I mean, there are these love stories here of Muslim Sinhala, Sinhala Tamil a lot of times. And I was trying to kind of, get my head around those. What do they do? Because as say, for instance, in Katyana Amrasingh's very interesting story of a journalist going and grappling with this, with the history of the North, Jaffna, as a political area, she comes across, one is the JVP, the Tamil guy in the JVP, and then who was killed, and then this new guy, Jayakanthan in Jaffna. And I was thinking, okay, I mean, they don't strike me as particularly Tamil. I mean, who's a Tamil? But that's not the issue. And then I thought, okay, I'm looking at this wrong. They're not supposed to be any real credible person, but rather they represent a history that this writer needs to deal with. And that sentiment is strongly marked there. So the stories, a lot of the stories are about the land of Jaffna, 83 riots, the war and its ravages, I was also very glad to see that people are talking of the Muslim community, I suppose, and I'm glad that Madhubhashini did bring that out, because even as Tamil literature is translated, as Sasanka said, quite widely, we don't see Muslim poets getting translated as much. I mean, there's kind of a talk. There's some representation, and so I'm actually now translating one on a venture of 101 Tamil poems I like. So then I can do what I want. I mean, I don't have to constantly keep translating chair, and that's one reason that I want to do 101 poems I like. Anyway, Amrakit's two stories here are very painful and funny. You know, I don't know whether you found it funny, but I saw a certain kind of humor too, and using, and in both his stories he uses a person with a disability, strong disabilities, that kind of cast them as outcast, and there's already a displacement that happens there, and I thought that was very interesting. And then this also another, as a Tamil reader, I also find, as a Tamil speaking person who's kind of cultural imaginary, political imaginary, is very strongly shaped by Tamil Muslim politics. I also was a little, not surprised, but maybe surprised to see how much of the Sinhala psyche is shaped by the political situation, condition of Buddhism. It's not just an external force, but it is also a psychological force, and I do not see such a big presence of Christianity or Islam or Hinduism in Tamil literature. They are there for the setting. If you're talking of caste, they might say temple. In Shobha Shaktis, you see the presence of the Catholic Church quite a bit, but not in the psychological way that you find here. And I found that very interesting, and it made me kind of realize, also recognize what is going on in the country more than what I did, And Prabhat's story, what a fine story that is. The dragon. The dragon arch, and it moved. It kind of, that multi-layered text was very moving and challenging, and that's perhaps one of the few stories that showed the collapse of the self. Then Erike Uliaparachi's stories both stories are about set within a Buddhist or Sinhala Buddhist milieu and Muslims. In one, Eric has also kind of tackled previously. Time? 1 minute. 2, okay. Has written, set his stories within the kind of Sinhala Muslim milieu. So this seemed an extension, and I was very pleased to see that. Maybe there was, I don't know whether we want to do an ethnic kind of shopping list, but I thought like maybe the upcountry people are not here, but anyway, you kind of do this searching, right? Then there's the burger. Kamalavira's story was a surprise, because this way I thought a very strong affinity with the Tamil. And I was like, okay, now what's going on here? And I don't want to say anything here, because I don't want to spoil the reading for anybody by theorizing and giving my take and all that, right? It's a very short story. And Ajit Tilakasena's story on the women is, I think, I felt more than the women writers. I thought this talked about women a lot more for me. Yeah, treasure hunt. The self of Madhubhashini. This is something I'll read. You know, it's a very, being a translator is being very humble. It's also a displacement of yourself, your ego, and, lot of it. But you also hold on to that. It becomes your work as well. You own it as your work, not the original writer's work. So I find that very promising here, how she locates herself as a translator. Sorry I took so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sumathy.